Alberta nonprofit Energy Simulation recently announced a $1 million investment to establish the Energy Simulation Center for Geothermal Systems Research in Alberta. And why is that important? Sounds kind of a nerdy, technical kind of a topic. But really, what this comes down to is if Canada and if Alberta wants to compete seriously in the emerging clean energy economy, the 21st century economy, it really has to establish itself in these new forms of energy like geothermal. And you can only do that through science and research. I mean, the Americans have taught us that how important science and research is to establishing an economy. And that's why this is important. Now, I'm going to talk to Dr. Roman Shor because he's been named the Energy Simulation Industrial Research Chair in Geothermal Systems. So welcome to the interview, Roman.
Oh, thank you, Markham, for having me.
No, like I gave this kind of rambling, introduction to this interview because this to me is really important. We Canada, I know we used to laugh about or joke about, the former Prime Minister Stephen Harper's ambition to be an energy superpower, but we are an energy superpower. In oil and gas, Canada is a big producer, and it's our biggest export sector by twice as much as automobiles. I mean, it's huge, but we are transitioning to clean electricity and low carbon fuels that are made with electricity. And geothermal has tremendous power potential. And if we're going to tap into that, we need to do more science and more hands-on research. Have I got that right?
No, absolutely. And even if you turn the clock back 20, 30 years, why is Canada an energy superpower in the world right now? It was lots of applied research, applied development that helped enable the development of the oil sands. Because Albertans and Canadians took an energy resource that was thought uneconomic and had zero potential and turned it into what is now one of the largest economic reserves of petroleum on the planet. So the geothermal is in that same exact state. Geothermal right now exists near hotspots and in a couple of small communities, small pockets, and in Europe in district energy systems. There's very little or almost practically none of it in North America, and absolutely almost none of it in Canada. So this new research center, its goal is to help enable that geothermal everywhere through that same type of, let's say, R&D and step forward that the oil sands did 20 or 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy. So let's talk about what the center will do. I gather it's supposed to train at least 2 research associates, 4 postdoctoral fellows, 16 PhD students, and 10 master's degree students on an annual basis. Is that a significant increase in the R&D capacity within this sector?
Well, so within the sector itself, it's a step change where we're increasing that number significantly. So we're doubling or tripling it. But if you think about it, it's a small handful of students. So that number right there is what the energy simulation funding will allow us to do and allow us to seed new projects and new ideas and really help accelerate things forward. Because for any industry that's ever worked with a university, they know that universities are slow. Faculty have exciting discussions with people from industry, so from engineers. They talk about cool things. And then you have the 6-month period where you're writing proposals, waiting for the funding to arrive, then another 6 months for the students to come. So I think what the real exciting thing here is this allows us to kickstart these projects faster by having those students already in place and then moving those projects forward on the scale of months rather than on the scale of years.
Is $1 million enough? I mean, it sounds like, given the scale of the ambition, that it's kind of maybe not enough.
Well, so if you think about it, so $1 million to help train students is quite a bit of money. So it will help, let's say, train those 15 or 20 students every single year. But it's a drop in the bucket. So that what we're hoping is this $1 million will help, let's say, snowball or help bring about multi-million-dollar projects that will help push these projects forward. Plus, most critically, will give these students hands-on industry experience where here's a project that's going in the ground. what is the R&D required to get it to work, plus also the operational experience of this is what this thermodynamic principle actually looks like in the field.
Roman, the center is going to have approximately 30 students on an annual basis. But if you had a best case scenario, if somebody came to you with a blank check and said, Roman, design a system so that we can train the researchers of tomorrow, how much money would you need? And how many researchers would you ideally be training?
Well, if you think about it, geothermal and oil and gas are fundamentally very similar, because in oil and gas, you're pulling out a hydrocarbon, a gas from the subsurface. For geothermal, you're pulling out a hot liquid. It doesn't really matter what that liquid is, it just needs to be hot. So the fundamental knowledge within geothermal is very, very similar to oil and gas. So I think the 20 to 30 researchers, those are the new students that are coming in that may be, let's say, finishing up their undergrads in chemical or mechanical engineering. They may be coming in from other countries and really want to learn about what the R&D potential is within Canada. I think there is a second group of potential people that can really help accelerate this. And we're starting to see this already in the geothermal industry. And that's the oil and gas engineers, the oil and gas professionals, those petroleum engineers coming in and pivoting their experience and their expertise to geothermal. And it's been very interesting watching the space over the last couple of years, where traditional geothermal has started to adopt some of these petroleum engineering principles, and you're seeing step changes and improvement in drilling performance. And by step change, I mean actual step changes, where you're going from 10 feet per hour to now 100 feet per hour in the same well, in the same rock, just through that application of knowledge.
Now, in the clean energy world, because clean energy is not a commodity, it's a technology. And even though geothermal uses oil and gas drilling and it's going down, it wants to find hot liquid in, kilometers underneath the earth, it still reminds me more of as a technology. And so will it have can we expect it to have the learning curve and the drop in the price curve that we've seen for wind and solar and batteries, and now we're seeing with electrolyzers?
Well, I think so. Because again, like if you look at all these different examples, the technology comes online, it's quite expensive, and then there is a push from either government or regulators to help enable this technology and help accelerate its development. Then through economies of scale, the price drops. Wind, solar, all of them went through it. In hydrocarbons, same thing. Oil sands went from a very expensive thing to now something that's economically produced. Natural gas went from something which we were running out of in the 1970s to now something so pretty much cheap that burning it is the most effective use for it, effectively. So I think geothermal stands at same product development lifecycle, where right now the capital investments are very high because the drilling is still quite expensive. Again, we have step changes and improvements coming in there. The turbines are still very large because the turbines for power generation are designed for those large prolific fields for geothermal, not for, let's say, the geothermal anywhere smaller field. So as we start developing, let's say, these smaller modular solutions, better drilling technologies, a better understanding of the overall system, I think we're going to see a drastic decrease in that upfront capital cost. Plus, once we start understanding the reservoir, then we again can optimize and use this system for an extended period of time. So that 30 or 50-year time scale.
Now, there's a lot of movement in the government circles and economic. Let me rephrase this. Economists are now beginning to understand better and advocate for government de-risking new technologies, new energy technologies. And how that gets done is up for debate. There's different approaches to it, some more interventionist, some less interventionist, fair enough. But is Alberta and the Canadian government as well, are they moving quickly enough and doing enough through policy, through tax credits, through subsidies, whatever it might be, Are they doing enough to de-risk this technology in a timely fashion?
Well, so I think there's a twofold answer to this. So to overall clean technologies, or I'd say to clean energy, there is quite a lot of enabling, let's say, government policies right now in place. The carbon tax, I know a lot of people don't like it, but it is helping enable and help fund R&D in clean tech for, let's say, wind farms, solar farms, for geothermal as well. And I know Alberta just released the regulation for geothermal production within the province, model a little bit off of what British Columbia has been doing for a while now. But again, the regulatory framework is coming online. However, if we think about just the push to geothermal, there is nothing specific. If we look south of the border right now, Department of Energy there's been a flurry of announcements from them for everything from lithium from geothermal brines to advanced manufacturing technologies for geothermal, to optimizing and development of open loop advanced geothermal or enhanced geothermal systems. Again, the geothermal office there is actively working. Canada doesn't per se have a geothermal office and is just instead helping develop the overall space. So the short answer is overall, there is a lot of support specifically for geothermal. I think a lot more could be done to help accelerate it and really accelerate it quickly.
Yeah, this sounds like the old Canadian, we've seen this in other industries. We've seen this even in many times in the energy sector, where instead of pouring in the resources that are required to do the job, we underfund it and then we sprinkle the money around just enough to create problems, and instead of solving them in a timely fashion. So, Roman, fascinating insights, and good luck with the new center. Thank you very much for this.
Nope, absolutely. And I think, again, the key thing that the center is going to try and do is bring people together, whether or not it's students, researchers, industry, government, et cetera, to help join this conversation. So I just, again, ask you, thank you, and please come join me.